Ladies and gentlemen, Abdullah here from Freedom for All. In this video, I will try to talk about assumption and why you have to be persistent in your assumption. We heard the word assumption from Neville Goddard so much in many of his books and lectures. Assumption is simply act of taking something for granted. Humans can take something for granted only if they accept it to be true. So assumption is acceptance of something to be true regardless of what the physical senses, proof, science and everything outside is showing. In speaking about assumption, Neville said, "The assumption is the crown of the mysteries because it is the highest use of consciousness." As you probably know that consciousness is the only reality, it is used mostly through your assumption. Neville called assumption the crown of all mysteries because life is full of mysteries. When you assume something to be true and you stick to that assumption, it becomes your experience and you enjoy the mystery of life, Neville said. An assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. So the important thing here is that any assumption could be true or even false if persisted in is manifested in the objective world. Now, what are true assumptions? Assumptions that are backed by proofs or prior facts are true assumptions. Assumptions that are not backed by any prior sign or fact or evidences are false assumptions. According to Neville, even an assumption that is factually false would still become fact only if you persist in. This whole thing in a nutshell is the law of assumption. So to recap this, assumption could be true or even false. Persistence to the assumption, which means you stick to what you decided to assume. You can't just give up on what you have assumed to be true, even if everything around you denies it. And manifestation, which is bringing it to pass in your objective world or experiencing your assumption as a fact. You can apply this law with the proper control of your own imagination, which is your own consciousness in action. Doing that, you can achieve your goals. Neville said, "When in imagination you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are mentally lifted up to a higher level. When through your persistence this assumption becomes actual fact, you automatically find yourself on a higher level, that is, you have achieved your desire in your objective world." So, facts are the things you experience because of your past assumption, and being in a higher level means experiencing your goal in the 3D world. The common mistakes which many people make are that they don't stick to their assumptions of their wish fulfilled and they question things like how or when their assumptions would be true. Many of the times they look for the evidences or signs to receive their assumed end and put their attention to the objective 3D world. These are some common mistakes which may put a person in a state of doubt and eventually that can make the person feel like assumed end is being delayed. Once you understand the law that persistent assumption becomes fact, believe in that law and apply it, you are guaranteed to receive the desired end. Neville said, "I promise you, if you persist, you will receive your assumption." Persistence is probably the biggest struggle many people go through, simply because they tend to accept what's seen in their eyes and don't want to accept their desired end just because it is unseen in their eyes. Neville said, "If you have a goal, although it is unseen, it already exists. Your normal mortal eye cannot see it, but by rearranging the structure of your mind, you can see it clearly. If, as the days follows one another, you remain loyal to this unseen reality and your goal is reached, you will have discovered the mystery of creation." The mystery of creation is something to be realized from faith, and when it comes to faith, it involves persistently believing what's not seen. So perseverance is important. Speaking about faith and perseverance, Neville said, "Faith holds to the fundamental truth that through the medium of an assumption, invisible states become visible facts. Assume that you are, and may I tell you, in a way that no one knows, you'll become it, but you must persevere, and the word perseverance is true. If I don't believe it, well then, 1 second later, I've turned back to my former state. Dare to assume and walk in that assumption, and that assumption, though at the moment it is denied by reason and denied by your senses, if you persevere in it, it will harden into fact. This is the law." So there is a direct relationship between faith and assumption. What's unseen or invisible becomes seen or visible through faith, and assumption is the bridge between faith and visible fact. Your former state is the state you don't want to be in anymore. That is the old you. The new you has to be courageous enough to assume and to persevere means to believe even if the present facts around you are denied by your physical senses and reasons. I'd like to share a very beautiful quote of Rumi related to perseverance or persistence. He said, "Certain energies come only when you burn. If you long for belief, sit down in the fire. When Rumi said you have to sit down in the fire and burn, it doesn't mean to suffer or feel bad always when things are difficult around you. It rather means to be more faithful and more perseverant while experiencing difficulties, because a moment of fulfillment while the outer world seems against you can do magic for you and change your life. Rumi also said, when the world pushes you to your knees, you are in the perfect position to pray. When it comes to pray, it is not so much about suffering or begging, rather it is about being happy, fulfilled and grateful even if the whole world seems to be opposing. Being able to be happy even if things seem difficult is what persistence is all about. It is important to remember that when it comes to persist, it is not supposed to be done from efforts. Rather, it should be natural and it has to follow the goal, no matter what it is in the outer world. Neville said, you don't persist through effort or fear. Rather, knowing that your imaginal act is now a fact, wait for its birth, for it will come. Your imaginal act is your desired end. You cannot be crazy to experience it in your outer world. Rather, you have to wait for it to come to pass, knowing that your desired end is already a fact in your imagination. So that's pretty much it about assumption and persistence in this video. Let me know how persistent have you been with your goals. Cheers!